It's on your business page, or there you go.
It is, yep. And I believe we're live.
Okay. Yes. I'm trying to
Yes.
share this.
Happy Friday. I know we are a few minutes
Happy
late getting started,
Friday.
but ma'am, I'm so glad to have you here to do this part two of the benefits of obedience and just to have this candid conversation so we can talk about what it really looks like and feels like.
Yes, ma'am.
Because I believe sometimes people may assume that obedience is easy, right? And I'm here to say that it's not. So,
It's really not.
hey,
It is
Talia,
really
I see
not.
you're here.
It is really not at all. I'm
Oh.
trying to share this around.
Okay.
Share
And
this
hey,
around.
Evelyn. Yeah, got my curls today. Got my curls.
She's rocking it, ain't she?
Oh,
My
so before we
goodness.
get started, I just want to introduce myself and then have you introduce yourself, and then we'll jump right into, kind of where we left off with the podcast. So,
Yes.
for everybody that is joining, thank you for tuning in with us today on Friday to talk about how important obedience is and what some of the benefits of obedience are. My name is Nicole Roan, and I'm a capacity coach. I help women to really increase their capacity by creating balance between their personal and their professional lives. And we are joined by the wonderful Grace, who's going to be talking us through, a little bit about her story and how obedience has played a part in that. And so, Grace, I will go ahead and give you the mic.
Thank you. I'm trying to adjust this camera. I should have brought a
Let's
pillow because
see.
I feel short.
You
Y'all
feel
can't see
short.
my cool shirt. Like I got all that. My shirt. I can't even see it. Anyway, it's all good.
Your earrings are cute though.
Oh, thank you. Just try. I can't beat you. You got all this going on. This ambiance.
Oh,
Okay.
girl.
I'm gonna act right. I'm gonna be good today. So my name is Grace. Hey everybody. My name is Grace. I am a transformational coach. I'm also the creator and founder of Smilebiz LLC, is a personal development company where I teach high performing women how to live a balanced lifestyle so they can be able to gain a life of peace, prestige, purpose, and prosperity. I love empowering women. I mentor and coach women. By trade, I am a board certified psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. So I do work in the mental health field. I treat mental illnesses, substance use disorders, been working in mental health over 8 years. I love it. So I do work in private practice and see patients, diagnose and treat patients. So everything I pretty much do is aligned. I definitely believe in deliverance. I believe in emotional wellness, mental wellness, spiritual wellness. All these things tie hand in hand in order for us to be able to truly thrive and live a life of abundance. So thank you, Nicole, for having me. I appreciate you. We did the podcast. That was amazing. So I thank you so much for I'm honored to be on your platform and to be able to speak to your audience today. So thank you for having me.
Ma'am, the feeling is mutual. I did share on the podcast where we met about 2 years ago. Uh-oh, do you hear that echo?
Yeah, it's a little echo, but it's okay. You sometimes
Okay.
maybe if you put you could lower your thing, and maybe if you have headphones, sometimes there's a feedback. And I will turn mine down a little bit too.
The boy has my headphones. The boy.
He's so cute.
Thank you. So I was saying that, we met about 2 years ago when we went to the speaking and coaching retreat. And I thought it was interesting how both of us, when we talked, before the podcast, we both were this close to not going, right? Like literally this close to not going, but both of us were obedient. We went, we met each other, we got a whole host of information and resources and met so many other women. And so that's why I really wanted you on today to kind of go over that a little bit more and talk about, specifically, what obedience has taught you, some of the struggles that you've come across, and then also how obedience impacts your capacity. So if you want, let's start a little bit with your story and how obedience has played into it.
Yeah, well, I haven't always been obedient. And some days I still don't feel like being obedient. But as I had shared on the podcast, that I actually had rededicated my life to God back in fall of 2018. I had a come to Jesus moment. I actually, what had started it was which I didn't really share in the podcast, but how I actually got back into fellowshipping and going to church and having an encounter with God. Initially, he was already working things in me. At that time, the year before, I had separated from my ex-fiance. We were no longer together. So I was going through that, processing that. After that, just jumping from situationship to situationship, not really giving myself time to truly heal. And then something had to give. I was just tired of feeling worthless, tired of feeling empty. In 2018, I had just graduated from grad school. I was in the process of studying for my boards. I had this beautiful home that we had initially bought together, and I had went through hell to keep that. You know what I'm saying? Like the devil was attacking me. So I went through a lot just to refinance on my home. It was just so much coming at me. And I just had all these great things, but I still felt empty. I still felt like there was this void, you know what I'm saying? And the word tells us, what profits a man to gain the world but still lose his soul, right? So I had all these wonderful materialistic earthly things, but I still felt empty inside. I felt like, well, what is my purpose? Why am I even here? So I had a come to Jesus moment. So prior to that, I actually went on a cruise. Before I went on the cruise, actually, let me swing it back. God started working in me, because although I wasn't in church and although my relationship with God was pretty superficial at the time, I used to listen to this sermon every Sunday when I got off work home. I used to listen to this pastor every morning on my way home. And I was like, one day I'm going to visit this church, and it's not too far from my house. I'm going to visit this church. I'm going to visit this church. So I told my mom, I'm getting up to go to this church. I feel like God is leading me to get back to church. It's been over 17 years. I was in church at that time and really been, in some type of congregation fellowship with other believers. So she's like, okay, you need to do that. So the day I went to go look for the church, I kid you not, I could not find this church. Wow. I went everywhere in PG County, could not find this church. Google had me all over the place. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, look at the devil. I finally want to go back to church, and this is
and can't find it.
I can't find the church. It had me going around in circles. So when I was about to give up, I kid you not, Nicole, it was like a still voice was coming in my spirit, like, keep going further, keep going further. So I went into this like business place. Like it looked like a business, had different businesses. It didn't look like a church park there. Yeah, business park. And this voice kept telling me, keep going, keep going. I'm like, why am I keep going in this cut? I don't know. I mean, what's up with this? So I just kept on the voice telling me to keep going. And I went at the ends of the business park. There were people, I'm Nigerian. I was born in Nigeria. So I saw people in African attire. And I'm like, I saw these people in African attire. Where they come from? So I saw this dude outside, and I asked him, I said, what's up with that? I see all these people in African attire. Like, what's African attire? Like, is something going on? Do they have is it a festival, something going on? He was like, no, it's a church. I said, it's a church? He said, yeah, it's a church. I said, oh, okay. I said, well, are y'all still in service? I'm looking for a church. He was like, no, we finished or whatever. I said, okay. I said, well, I'm going on vacation to the Bahamas, but when I come back, I'm coming to this church. Yeah. And he was like, okay, yeah, come. So I can't, during the Bahamas. So actually on my way back home, I saw like signs on the side of the road about this church. I didn't see it the first time.
Wow.
But I heard a voice tell me to keep going straight. I didn't know it was God's voice. I just heard a voice. And then there were signs on the side of the road that said about this church being in the cut, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna come back to this church. And then when I went to the Bahamas, I just started having, like, God just started downloading things to me. Like the last leg of the Bahamas, I joined this Pray for Your Future Spouse challenge back in 2018. Okay. So I did the challenge, and I started doing that. And then when I got home, There was a day where we were like praying for our spouse's spiritual or his soul salvation, all this stuff. We was praying about their walk with Jesus. And that's where I met God on my bedroom floor. And God was like, man, you praying about this husband and praying about this man, but you got some things you need to be praying about. So the whole prayer turned from my future husband praying about his walk with God, and God started working on me because my walk with God was nowhere near what it needed to be, right?
Yeah.
So I literally met God on my bedroom floor. It was like, and this encounter, I can't even describe it. And I just started crying and weeping because I had all this stuff inside of me that I've been carrying on since I was a child, and dealing with my relationship with my dad and all these situationships and relationships, and then my breakup with my ex-fiance and all this stuff that I was holding inside and not giving it to God and not surrendering, you know what I mean? Because I thought I could handle it. I didn't want anyone to see the vulnerable side of me and all this stuff. So I was just carrying all this emotions and all this dysfunction inside of me. So it was like when I don't know how long I laid on that ground, but when I got up, it just felt like a burden was lifted off of me. I felt like chains was broken. I really felt delivered. You know, that was my deliverance, you know. And like God was like, you don't have to hold on to this anymore, daughter. You don't have to hold on to this. This is what I'm here for. And it's just like I felt his presence. It's just undescribable. And that was kind of like where my start was, you know. And I'm not gonna say the next day I'm like, whoo, super saint. No, it's like
that
a
you
process.
were saved, sanctified, and on the straight and narrow.
Exactly.
Tell
It's
the
a
truth,
process.
which is good.
It's a process, and God was just had to purge things out of me, just certain things I just did not want to do anymore. My lifestyle that I was living, I just didn't want to do it anymore. Down to certain books that I was reading, I didn't want to read those anymore. Drinking, I didn't want to do that anymore. Certain TV shows I didn't want to do anymore. It's like he just like I just wanted to honor God. Like I've been running away from God all these years. You know, I just wanted to honor him and just love him, you know. So
yeah,
it's
I
really
want to pause
amazing.
and I want to go back to a couple of things that you said. First and foremost, thank you for sharing so openly your walk, right? And what it looked like, and you know, how even on your way in deciding to try to find the church, it sounds like you were discouraged because you couldn't find it, but you heard a voice and you were obedient. And that obedience led you to, I guess, rekindling your relationship with God and being able to be like open and in a space and have the capacity for God to really come into your life. And so I think it's amazing how even in that moment, in so many different situationships, as you say, it's not always this big, loud, booming voice. It's this subtle nudge, right? And I often refer to it, yes, as God, but also our intuition and our gut that God put inside of us for us to be able to pay attention to. And I'm so grateful that you listened to that, because it sounds like you were able to really start to get your life together. And I appreciate the openness in you saying that, you know, after you had your come to Jesus moment, the next day was not like, because it's a whole process. It's a whole process.
It's a whole process.
And one of the things that I want to talk about then is, you know, talk about what was difficult in the process of becoming obedient, especially when, you know, it's new. Because I'll say for me, it's a work in progress every single day. Like there's not a day that it's just super easy for me. So talk to us about some of the common struggles that come up when you are trusting God, listening to your gut, and trying to practice obedience.
As you said, it's a process. It's really about surrendering. I think a lot of the challenges that most people have, including me, is control, especially if you type A, like me.
If you're type A, put type A in the comments. Somebody just type the letter A.
Yeah,
because I know some of us are type A.
Because my mindset, in which I know also I use for my practice, my business, is trying to figure things out, like get to the roots analysis, you know, of it. So sometimes it's a strength, but at the same token, it can delay me in a way where I want to know every single detail. And that's not how God works. So
you mean it's not all laid out, clear cut with all the instructions?
It ain't no Legos build blueprint. No, God give you a little piece like that. Like, take that. That's all I got for you.
Mm-hmm.
Use what I gave you. Use what's in your hand. That's it. So it's about just releasing that control. And I think that's why a lot of people have challenges with obedience, is because we want to know what the outcome is that fear of the unknown. Okay, well, how's
Mm-hmm.
it going to turn out? God's telling me to do this, or God's telling me to go speak to this person, or God has attached me to this person. Like, but how's it really
Mm-hmm.
going to work out at the end? And all that fear and doubt is really the weapon of the enemy. So
Mm-hmm.
obedience is really about just letting go and giving God full control, because God already has control, but he's waiting for us to let it go. He
Mm-hmm.
wants us to surrender to him. So I think a lot of the challenges come from that. Our human nature just wants us to hold on so tight to this thing,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I'm saying, versus letting it go and let God do what God does,
How did you
And
let go? Talk to us about that. Because I know for me, it was easy to say it, right? Everybody says, let go and let God. Like, just listen, just surrender. But the process of doing that, like the mental, the emotional, the physical, the spiritual, pieces that are attached to when you're trying to practice that, how do you go from, not being obedient to practicing obedience and dealing with all the stuff that comes up when you're trying to literally let go?
yeah. Well, first, to take a decision, you have to decide. I had to decide, well, Grace, either you're going to continue living in dysfunction, either you're going to continue harboring resentment for your dad, harboring resentment for the people who betrayed you, or whatever that's happened in your life, or you keep, if you're going to continue operating out of that young girl, you know what I'm saying? Or you're going to
Mm-hmm.
decide enough is enough. You're going to decide enough is enough. I need to just allow God to take control, because I don't have a good track record doing it on my own. My
Mm.
resume is kind of bad. you
Say
know,
it again, because most of
I
us
don't have
are
a good
out here
track
trying to do it
record. What
on
makes
our
me
own,
think,
ma'am.
thank you. What makes you think my resume is great? So first it takes a decision, then it's just taking one step. You're not going to get everything, as they say, the cliche, Rome is not built in a day. You're not going to get everything in one day. Just do one step. If it means you just like unlearning one behavior, because
Mm-hmm.
it goes back to unlearning our behaviors. A lot of our behaviors we learn too as a child, things that we seen maybe our parents did, our grandparents did, maybe things we've seen in culture,
Mm-hmm.
TV, all this stuff. So it's about also unlearning certain behaviors, but you just
Mm-hmm.
gotta take one step. And even when you fall short, don't beat yourself about it, because I think sometimes we get caught up in this guilt. Oh my God, I didn't listen to what God said. You're not going to burn in the lake of fire. you know, you like,
Are
thank
you
God that
sure?
our Lord,
Are you sure?
listen, thank God our God is so loving, and he's a redeemer. You know what I'm saying? He's so kind.
Yeah.
I think people have this crazy image of who God really is. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, he was the lamb, and he's also the lion. Okay.
Mm.
However, God is gentle with us. And we have to change our perspective of how we see God. I think we see God as this, although we have reverence and honor for him, I think we just see God
Mm-hmm.
as this, like, oh, he's sitting on a mountain, Olympus, and pulling strings and all this stuff. That's not how God is. God is, he gives us free will to make our own decisions. The
Mm-hmm.
Holy Spirit is gentle with us. So if we look
Mm-hmm.
at him as our father, if we look at God as our father versus a tyrant, or versus someone who's just, this is someone that's just giving you orders to do this, that, and the third.
Mm-hmm.
We look at him through the viewpoint of, this is my father. He loves
Mm-hmm.
me. Then it makes it a little bit more easier to be able to walk in obedience. But when you're looking at him like, oh, God is just this tyrant, he wants,
Mm-hmm.
if you're looking at him through those eyes, then of course you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle big
Yeah.
time, more than what an average person would struggle. You know what I'm saying? So
And
it's
you're
about
saying
your
it's a
perspective.
relationship, right?
It's a relationship.
You gotta treat it like you would any other relationship that
That's right.
you have that you desire. It's reciprocal, right? It's not one
Right.
way. And it's funny you say, I call it putting God in a box, right? Like I
Hmm.
used to think the same thing. Like God is just telling me I got to do this, 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 and this. And if I don't do it like this the first time around, then it's a wrap. And so
Right.
everybody comes into their knowing and their understanding about their relationship with God in different ways. And you said a couple of things that I wrote down that I wanted to point out. Um, as you're on this obedience journey, the first thing that you have to do, you said, is to decide. And so, really deciding that this is something that I want to do. And
Yes.
sometimes, even beyond if it's something that I want to do, it's something that I have to do, something that I need, because what's attached to my obedience on the other side is
That's
greatness,
right.
is
That's right.
prosperity, is abundance, is community, is all the things that you've been needing so that you can be able to flow and flourish in every single area of your
That's
life.
right. That's right.
And you also talk about taking it one step at a time, because I know, like, I literally had this conversation earlier today about taking things one step at a time. So often in every single area of our life, we're looking to do it all in one swoop, right? Like,
Yeah.
specifically, we were talking about entrepreneurship, and I was saying how every day, sometimes 2-3 times a day, I fire myself and I rehire myself, right? Because full-time entrepreneurship ain't no joke.
Whew.
And
Ma'am.
even in those times, understanding, like, I'm not going to get it all in the first
Mhm.
time, and being
Mhm.
able to give myself grace, because that was the other piece that you said, right? Being able to give yourself grace and know that, especially when you're starting something new, you're new at it. And us type
Mhm.
A folks who are used to just wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, knocking stuff out the park, is like, look,
That's right.
I was able to do this with my eyes closed, hands tied behind my back. How come I'm not able to do it now?
Yeah.
And every area of our life calls for a different level of obedience. And so I love that you point all of that out. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I see Carla joined. Hey, Carla, thank you. She said we look good, girl.
Ah, thank you,
Happy
girl.
Friday.
Appreciate you. Appreciate you.
Um, I want to ask you too, what has obedience taught you? And outside of your spiritual life, how has obedience helped you in the different areas of your life?
It's also helped me really in motherhood. I'm a single mom, and
Mm,
just the way that I approach things with my son, you know,
mm,
um, because I don't want to, because I grew up in a pretty unstable environment. And with my relationship with my father, you know, I didn't want to pass on dysfunction to my son.
mhm,
And just because there's things that I was taught, or culture wise, or family, doesn't mean that I have to continue it with my child and my future kids, right?
mhm,
So I had to unlearn certain behaviors to be able to be a better mom to him.
mm,
um Growing up, we didn't, and it's nothing like against my parents or anything. I always believe my parents did their best for what they had, because they didn't know neither,
mhm,
and there's things that happened in my father's life that made him the way that he is now, right? So God had to show me that. And with that being said, I had to unlearn certain things, because growing up, our parents didn't really hug us all the time, or share affection with us like that. So for
mhm,
me, it was difficult for me, even in the relationships that I had, trying to be open, honest, and affectionate, because I never learned how to do that. So with
mhm,
my son, I'm very like, he wants a hug, he gets a hug. I don't care if he asks me a million
yes.
times. I do that because I want him to feel valued. I want him to feel like he's being heard, because I
Mhm,
didn't have that growing up. And it affected me mentally and emotionally more than I really thought it would. Because I saw something on Facebook the other day, and somebody was saying about, when kids go through trauma and stuff like that, or just their parental, their relationships with their parents aren't that great growing up, and they may have turned out great. They may have turned out, okay or whatever, but we don't understand really how much damage that's inside, right?
Because
So
they look
although,
okay on the outside, but we
right,
don't know what they're feeling on the inside.
exactly. So although I may have accomplished all these things, I had stuff still rooted inside of me that people wouldn't know unless I speak about it, because you don't see it on the outside. So for me, I was like, okay, there's certain things I can't do like my parents did. You know what I mean? This just being more vulnerable and transparent, and being a safe space for my son to come and talk to me. I had to change. I had to adopt that, because I didn't have that growing up. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
didn't really, we're, I hate to say it, but our culture, Nigerians, it's kind of like, it's a little bit different. You know what I'm saying? And our parents did our very best. My mom tried to keep, open conversations with us about a lot of things, but me being the oldest, I'm kind of like was the guinea pig with my brothers and sisters who was
I'm
kind of a little bit
laughing
more
because
open.
I'll say it in a second. Listen, Grace, like first and foremost, thank you for bringing in the parenting aspect. And you bring up so many good points, because even unlearning things that we learned from our parents, and then learning things we didn't learn from our parents, and being obedient and applying that to how we show up as parents in our children's lives is so important. And being, I'm the second oldest, but I'm the second oldest of 10 siblings, and my brother's the oldest. So I tease him all the time. Y'all hear me say I'm by default the oldest. And so you're right with the whole guinea pig situation. And even as I see, my parents are older now, but I have some younger siblings, how they parent them versus how they parented me. I'm like,
it's
oh, so
different.
you just gonna let her talk to you that way?
It's different. Like our youngest just turned 20 in October. Like, my mother's totally different, and I understand why, because she learned from us her mistakes, with us, and she want to do different things with our youngest blessing. So I understand that, so now I'm like, okay, I can't bring the same thing to my son. And let's keep it real, Eden is a Black boy in America. And it's me working in mental health space, I see so much about men and their mental health. And it starts from childhood. And a lot of times men don't have a safe place where they can just be vulnerable and be transparent and just share their feelings without something being attached to that. And I didn't
It's
want that.
almost shamed, right? Like
It's like
boys
shame.
don't
It's like a
cry.
stigma. Yeah, we have this crazy these colloquialism. Well, you're a man, you're a boy. Why are you crying? Like, we start that as young, as if them
Super early.
crying is supposed to change something about their manhood. And obviously, me being a woman, I can't raise my child to be a man, obviously. You know what I'm saying? However,
Yes.
I can create a space where he can feel like open enough to come and talk to me about anything, and I won't pass judgment on him. I'll give him wise counsel, like, you may not want to do that or whatever, but I want to give him a space where he feels comfortable enough to come talk to me, give him a space where he can be vulnerable with me, give him a space where he can be emotional. If he want to hug, like I said, he can get that. I want my son to be emotionally sound, because these seeds that I'm planting in him is going to be for his overall well-being. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because what he's learning now, as he's about to be 13, what he's learning right now is going to impact him in his manhood. I don't want my son to be one of those men who are emotionally unavailable. You know what I'm saying? Or one of those men who are not in tune with their emotions because they didn't learn that from childhood. Then he has to unlearn that dysfunction. So there's certain strongholds in my family that I believe stops with me if I'm in obedience. But if I'm not in obedience or listen to God, like God telling me, Grace, I know you're frustrated right now with him, but you got to find another way to talk to him. You got to find another way to come to him. If I just act on my emotions and going off on him, then he's going to shrink back and like, well, I can't come to my mom with anything because when I come to my mom, she just go boom. And
She go ham.
I haven't always been that way. What'd you say?
I said, because mama go ham.
Listen, I haven't always been that way. It's really by the grace of God, honestly, with anybody. Because I used to be the person that go from 0 to 60 real quick. Like
just blink.
bust
Boom,
you with
I'm there.
The white meat.
Look, and I want to highlight what you're saying too, because the obedience as a parent, I know I've faced, and tell me if you face this too, criticism from well-meaning family members, right? Like, oh, you too soft on the kids, or I can't believe that you know, allow them to stump off and they're, you know, not acting like black kids or whatever it is, you know, and being able to be, number one, obedient in being committed to their best mental health and shaping that and planting those seeds now. Because again, I have these kids and we live in the suburbs and they see a lot of people that do a lot of different things. And I've gotten criticism from well-meaning friends and family that say I'm too soft, right? But how have you handled the obedience of parenting the way that you know needs to be utilized for your child, despite other people giving their 2 cents?
Prayer. That's it. Prayer gives me wisdom. I don't go by what other people say because they don't live in my household. You know, and I feel like every household is unique. You know, however you want to do things in your house, do whatever you want to do in your house. But in my household is totally different. I go by the wisdom of God. I always intercede for my son, and I always ask God for wisdom and how do I deal with this situation? You know, where am I supposed to go with this? You know what I mean? So I don't go by what other people say, because at the end of the day, first of all, they're not God. They did not give me this child. And I always have to remind myself, yes, Eden is my son, but he is God's son. I have to remind myself that like God knew him before he was even in my womb. He knew of Eden before Eden was even thought of. So I have to be a good steward of what God gives me, including my child. So I don't go by what other people say. I have to go, like, if I'm going through something, then I will, you know, and I have in the community is important too, because in my community, I have nothing but prayer warriors in my community. If I have an issue with my son, I will go to his grandmother's real quick. I need you to intercede.
I got grandma
like
on speed dial. Listen, like, whoop,
whoop. Listen,
hey, mom.
Whoop, whoop. Mom, I'm going through this. Like, what? Give me some. What should I do? And of course, I have friends who have kids who are walking this walk as I am. You know what I mean? Who are in the Lord, and they have sons and they have children, so I can talk to them as well. And they, you know, give me. So it's about, you know, listening to what God says, praying over your children. We need to be interceding for our children before our children are even born. I pray about my future kids now. My bonus kids, however God wants to do it. I pray, I put those seeds in now, you know, in place, because the enemies can be very tricky, manipulative, and you ain't about to have my children. That's just, you're just not. The one that's here and the one that's coming. No, you're not.
The current and the future.
Listen, I'm a praying mama. So I intercede for him. I have a community of wise women around me that I can be able to ask certain things and to be able to kind of guide me and like, okay, well, have you encountered this before? Because I'm about to have a teenager. I don't know nothing. You know, I know how I was when I was a teenager.
Good luck and God bless. I told you I got this 17-year-old. She'll be 18 in a month and a half. So I'm gonna need you and your prayer warriors to pray for me too, because this is the hardest part of parenting for me, as the teenager. So yeah,
it's tough because you have so many things that we're coming up against, because you know the world has a different standard. You know, culture is a different standard than kingdom. So you're trying to adjust in a way where you want to be relatable to your kids, but you also don't want them to go off the deep end either. So it's kind of like I have to get a balance, because Eden knows when I don't play neither. I don't coddle Eden.
I'm laughing because all I hear in my head is, I'm not your friend.
I don't
I'm
model
not one
my
of your
son
little
at
friends.
all. Exactly. So you just have, oh Lord, girl, don't even have me flashback from my childhood.
Oh, yeah.
Flashback. Like,
Oh, goodness.
ma'am, excuse me, don't think because you grown. No, it don't work that way.
Listen, ma'am.
Are you all parents? My mother used to do just give us a look. She ain't have
And
to
that was
worry.
enough. Not these
That
new
was
kids,
enough.
though. Not the new kids. That's a
Not,
whole
not,
nother
oh Lord, not
conversation.
these kids. Not these children.
No.
I'm like, excuse me? Oh, you expressing yourself now? This is what we're doing?
My son asked me the other day, I asked him to do something, and he said, he literally said, "Is this what we're doing? Is this what we're on?" It's,
Ma'am.
sir, what? I'm like,
Ma'am.
okay, listen, I get that you've heard me use that, but that's not what we do. And I literally
That's
was
not
like,
what we
I'm not your
do.
friend.
That's not what we do. Not at all. Like mine was straight crochet. Like, mom,
Oh,
mom, he'd be like, Mom, you're being extra. You're doing too much.
yeah,
And your
have a
point is
seat.
what?
Hmm.
Several.
So I want to ask
Several.
you one more question, and then I want to give the folks an opportunity to ask some questions as well, because I know we've been doing all the talking and we could talk all day long. So if you
Yes, we
have
can.
questions about obedience or challenges, please, please, please drop those questions in the chat. And Grace, I want to ask you
Mhm.
specifically, how do you feel like your capacity is impacted by obedience?
It's a stretch. Um, I think it's the obedience part, just trying to make sure that it boils down to also, following the instructions of God, you
Hmm.
know, and following the instruction of God can stretch your capacity
Hmm.
because it requires more from you. It requires you really
Hmm.
dying to your flesh because you want to operate out of what you think you should be doing, what you think you know, and the world tells us our ways are not his ways, our thoughts are not his thoughts. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So it's that capacity is going to stretch you, it's going to challenge you to walk in obedience, because obedience is not a pretty process. There's going to be many things that you're called to do that you're not going to want to do. There's going to be many things you're called to do that doesn't make sense. There's many things that you're going to be called to do that God is calling you to do that other people think is dumb. You know
Hmm.
what I'm saying? Like, we all through scripture, you see he called people to do all these radical things, and other people who knew about it was like, that's not going to work for you. That's
Don't do
stupid.
that.
You know what I mean? Don't do that.
Yep.
And so that vision he gives us and wants us to follow the instructions is going to stretch you. Is really
Yeah.
going to stretch you to think past whatever you thought. You know what I mean? You have to literally
Hmm.
die to your thoughts, because it don't even
Hmm.
matter. And follow the instructions that God. So your capacity is going to be stretched. And that's why I always tell people, like, when you're asking God to do these miracle sights and wonders in your life, you need to also ask God to help you be a good steward. You need to ask God to give you the grace to be able to handle that capacity, because when he elevates you, there's more responsibility, more things that's required.
To
You're going to
whom
take
much is given, much is
elevation.
required. Yep.
That's right. Elevation takes a lot. So you're not going to be the same person that you were when you was just doing this. You know what I'm saying? So I
Yeah.
think God always starts us at a smaller space to see how we're going to be able to handle those things first
Hmm.
before he moves us. Hey, Chanel, before he moves us up. So you
Oh,
need to ask the Lord.
my mama
Yeah,
here too.
you need to ask the Lord to give you the grace to be able to deal with those things that are going to come. Prepare you now for the next, prepare you now for the season that's going to come, because you're going to be stretched. And if you do not get be in the right mental space and get to that place, you're going to struggle when you get into that next season.
Yeah.
And I think what I get stirred up about this, because I think what trips me up about us believers sometimes is we just, for one, think that God's just gonna hand things to us. Just like, here you go. All I
You
gotta do is
ask,
pray for
because
you.
look, I got something back here that says pray, believe, ask, receive, right? But it's more to it than that. It's
There's
it's
more to
not
it.
just that. I'll let you finish, and I'm gonna talk about what I
It's
think
it's
about capacity.
it's true. And we want God to give us A, B, C, and D and all this stuff, but we never ask God like to truly prepare you for those things.
Mm-hmm.
Because where he's elevating you to, you might have to lose some people that you thought that was going to be your A1s. He's going to literally remove every branch that bears no fruit. That is what scripture says. He's going
Mm-hmm.
to purge things out of you. He may remove people out of you. He may isolate you for some time so he can develop you. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? This walk is not easy. And we have this crazy ideology, and I really believe is religiosity that has us thinking these things versus the relationship with God. We have this crazy ideology that because we serve God, we're not supposed to struggle. We're not going to have challenges. Yes, he comes to give us
Girl,
an abundant life and everything, but there's nowhere in scripture does it say that you're not going to have trouble. If anything, God said you're going to have trouble. He told the disciples you're going to have
expect
trouble.
it. Yes.
Expect it. Expect it. Like, the enemy is not going to mess with you if you on his team. Like, come on now. You are going to be spiritually attacked. So you need to be able to discern in the spirit. You need to be in the presence of God and be able to get wisdom and understanding how to move about doing things. You know what I mean? You
Mm-hmm.
cannot be these like I like to say the soft Christians, like, oh well, let me pray my Hail Marys. Sometimes you got to get up in there and fight
Faith
the
without
fight.
works is dead, is what it comes down to as
That's
well.
what it boils
Right?
down to. You're going to
Listen.
face challenges. And that's what the devil wants you to do, wants you to give up. He doesn't want you walking obedience because he doesn't want
Mm-hmm.
you to fulfill the purpose for your life. That's just what it boils down
Yeah.
to. So you got to get in there and fight from victory.
And
From
do the
victory.
work. And do
And
the work.
do the work.
You
Do
said
the work.
something earlier about mental capacity, right? And I wanted to go back to that because I believe that obedience is directly connected and tied to our capacity.
That's
Oftentimes we
right.
are asking for things, but don't take any time at all to see if we have room, aka the capacity for the things that we're
Mhm.
asking for.
Mhm.
And in that, we are being pruned. We are having things, people, places, taken out of our lives so that we can create the capacity.
The
And
space for it, yeah.
yeah, the space. And it really does start with our heads and our hearts. If
Mhm.
you are so busy, first of all, just being busy, that you don't make time to pray, you don't make time to meditate, you don't make time to just get still or get quiet, you don't have the mental capacity to
Mhm.
do anything, right? Let
Yeah.
alone if you're holding on to all of these, hurts and traumas and
All
situations
these
that you've been
heartbreaks.
through. You don't
Mhm.
even have the emotional capacity, right?
Mm-mm.
And so
Mm-mm.
making sure that we're tying into that and also understanding where is our capacity for faith. Because yeah, we know that, all it takes is, the faith of a mustard seed, but in practical application, if you are not building that relationship with God, if you're not practicing and praying and, taking the time to get quiet, you're not going to have the capacity to do nothing anyway. So I need you to
That's
stop
right.
asking God for stuff you ain't got the capacity to maintain. Like, pray for capacity.
Ma'am,
How about we pray for capacity? Can we do that?
we need to pray for that.
Like,
Pray for capacity. When I pray like
seriously.
God, you enlarge when I say enlarge my territory, not meaning as far as like materialistic or worldly things, but enlarge my capacity. Help me
Mm-hmm.
show me how to be a good steward of these things. Because when we hear good
Yes.
stewardship, we hear like monetary things. We hear like, oh, I'm a good, but you need to be a good steward of the people he brought into your life.
Yes. And a steward of your
People,
time as well, because that's tied to the
steward of your
people that are in
time.
your life. Yep.
Steward of your time.
Yep.
I feel like we waste our time doing unnecessary things and then we wonder why we're not productive. There's a difference between busyness and productivity.
A big
Busyness
difference.
is aimless, has no goal. You out here flexing on the gram, but you ain't about nothing. You ain't doing it. I'm just being
Say
honest.
it again.
You here flexing on the gram with your crop pictures, and you ain't got no receipts. That's a problem.
Show me the
And we
receipts.
gotta stop doing that.
Oh, I love you.
We gotta stop. We gotta stop doing that. This is crazy.
Oh, yeah.
We got no results, but you steady posting and flexing on the gram like you
Yeah.
about that life. Sis,
Cut it out.
cut
Cut
it
it
out.
out.
Because God has called you to greater. God has called you to greater. And sometimes he puts us in the dark room to develop us. It's just like a picture. I don't know,
Yep.
nowadays everything's digital, right? But
But they
I
used to.
remember
They still got some of them old school cameras, girl,
I
where
too,
it's got to be
okay,
in the dark room, in
everything's
the
digital now,
liquid, hang to
we're in
dry.
2021, so I don't know. I used to work as a dental assistant, right? And we used to do, before we started doing the panoramic thing or whatever for the teeth and stuff, we used to develop in a room, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as the light opens up, it ruins the picture. So I literally had to learn how to do the little tray and develop all that stuff in the
In
dark.
the dark. You had to learn how to see in the dark.
I had to learn how to see in the dark. Sometimes God will put us in the dark spot, and it's not to isolate you from the world and make you feel. He has to get you to focus on him. So he will strip different things from you and develop you, because he wants to develop you. He's not going to just push you out there and
Mm-hmm.
you're not prepared.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So sometimes he'll isolate you and put you in the dark room to develop you
Mm-hmm.
before he shows you to the world. We too busy out here announcing all this stuff, and we're not even prepared. And then you wonder why things flip flop in your life, because you didn't allow God to be able to develop you. You didn't allow God to really enrich, put things in you. There's things in you that he wants to purge out. So you out here
Mm-hmm.
speaking to people, and sis, you ain't healed.
Mm.
You out
Mm.
here pouring dysfunction on people because of
Ooh.
your hurts, because you
And
didn't
hurt
allow God
people
to
hurt
heal you.
people.
Hurt people hurt people. We don't know. We activate things with our mouth. So if you out here with all this bitterness in your heart, all this resentment in your heart, you talking all about all men and all men is this and all this and that. You here talking at women conferences with all this dysfunction in your heart. What you're
Ooh.
pouring back to these women is dysfunction. You're not pouring healing and deliverance. You are pouring dysfunction because you didn't allow God to heal those parts of your heart. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to be completely healed, and
Mm-hmm.
wholeness is a lifetime pursuit. We talked about that in on the
Mm-hmm.
podcast, right?
It's a process, yeah.
It's a process, but you gotta allow God. You can't be out there. You're in a mentorship and leadership and trying to lead women, and you're not even allowing God to heal your heart. Like, how can you do that?
You
How
can't.
can you do that? You're pouring dysfunction to people.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's happening,
So
and we
to
don't
heal,
understand.
I feel like what you're saying is that we got to be obedient in order to be developed. When God is developing you, be obedient, whether you are
That's
in the
right.
room working in the dark, whether you are praying for capacity and God is removing people, places, and things from your life in order to be able to show up who we've been called to be. You have
That's
to
right.
be obedient. And it's not
Yes,
always going to be pretty. In fact, it's
it
pretty
ain't pretty.
ugly. Can we say that and be honest?
Yes,
Obedience is
it's an ugly
ugly.
process.
And on top of that, it takes patience and grace and community and all of those things. And so really our obedience, and I posted something earlier today that was on my heart in my community because I was listening to TD Jakes as I was working out. Our obedience and what's on the other side of it ain't even about us. It's about what we're supposed to do here, who we're supposed to help, how we're supposed to help them. Everything that we've been through,
That's
good,
right.
bad, and different, is
Yes.
for us so that we can help other people get through that. So the longer that you put off being obedient, we talked about that too, it's delaying your progress and you're delaying somebody else's healing and refreshing that's attached to your obedience.
That's right.
So I
Your
need all of
obedience
us to
is
do
your
that.
deliverance.
Yep,
Your obedience
exactly.
is someone else's deliverance. So,
Yes,
when you start looking past yourself, you start looking past yourself and understand that. That's why I knew that I had to get to a place to forgive my dad. It's not about
yeah.
me.
Nope.
I have
And forgiveness ain't for them either. It's for
it
you.
ain't
So
for
you're not
them.
pouring out from the stage talking about how all men ain't this, that, and the third at these ladies' conferences. Come on now.
Because the first man in your life didn't live up to what he didn't do what he was supposed to do,
Mm-hmm.
right?
So you
He
take it
didn't
out
do
on
what he was
everybody else.
supposed to do. And I think sometimes that changes also how we see God. Our parental relationships, it changes how we see God, because the parents that we did that was in our life that's supposed to be there for us and all this stuff, they're not
Mm-hmm.
there. And then we start looking at God in a different light. We do that a lot of times. Like even people who are church hurt and all this stuff they go through, they start blaming God when it wasn't God. It was that person. It's unfortunate that that person abused what God's love looked like, and that changed your perspective. So it's not God, it's that person.
They're still human, right? Like they're still human. They're not God. And
they're
it's
not God.
All for a purpose.
They're not God. And you're right. You have to be our obedience is not for us. God never gave us our calling for us. We're just a vessel that he uses.
I need somebody to put it ain't about you in the comments.
It ain't about you.
Somebody put it ain't about you in the comments.
It ain't about you. And if you don't walk in obedience, you're going to be demoted. God's going to find somebody else to use. And when I was preparing for this live, Saul came into my head. And how Samuel went to Saul and told him that he had to go and God had demanded for him to kill all the Amalekites. And he didn't do that. He went and spared their king, Agag. He went and kept their cattle and all this stuff. That's not what God told you to do, Saul. That's not what he told you to do. And you know his reply was, you know, he did all this burnt sacrifice, and Samuel was like, God didn't ask you. No, that's not what he asked for. No. He asked, isn't obedience better than sacrifice? And Paul wanted, like he said, he was a fear of man. So a lot of times we don't walk out in what God told us to do because we're worried about what everybody and their mama thinks.
Ma'am.
Right? That fear of approval of everyone, that mama. God didn't give them that vision. Why are you worried about that? And that's what stops us from being obedient a lot of times, because we worried about what other people think. We worried about, are they going to say that I'm called? Or, you know, I don't have a title in church. You know, did God really God really give me this? Did I hear God clearly about this thing that he's asked me to do? Or he asked me to go talk to this person, whatever is big or small, he actually sometimes we want to go to people for their confirmation when he already gave you how many confirmations?
Listen, you got to see it 4 to 5, 6 times.
Right. We don't always have to go get a prophetic word when God already gave you confirmation. And he demoted Saul because Saul was disobedient. So as Chanel said, please talk about demotion. He sure will use somebody else.
In a heartbeat.
He sure will.
Keep playing.
Keep playing. You'll be demoted like Saul.
Listen.
He will raise up another king.
In a heartbeat. Oh my gosh. Grace, this is so good. I'm so grateful for you. And I want to say, you know, anybody who has not listened to the podcast this week, go check it out, because we go into detail more of Grace's story. I share some pieces as well, and we really talk about what it means and what it looks like, what it feels like to walk in obedience, and talk about, again, what some of those different benefits are. And so I want to invite each and every one of you to make sure that you are following Grace. Join her Facebook community. Tell us everywhere else that we can find you as well.
Okay, yeah. So I have a Facebook community, Woman Arise Tribe. And it's pretty much to help women grow spiritually, also grow in their personal and professional life as well. As I say, as I even said on the podcast, you don't have to be sanctified, saved to join this group, because at the end of the day, it's about spiritual maturity. So no matter what
level, thank you for putting that out there, ma'am, because everybody is at a different level and they walk with God. Okay.
Right. Some people can feel intimidated in an environment like that. And that's not what we promote. We promote sisterhood. We promote support and accountability. And this is how I am all day, every day. So I'm raw in your face, but I'm also gentle.
Lit, y'all.
I'm also gentle. Don't be intimidated.
And that's okay.
Don't be intimidated. So please join that. We would love to have you. There's other sisters in there that help you in your walk. You know, we're all growing together. We're all in different journeys, but we're all going through the same thing. It's chasing after God. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it doesn't matter what level you're in. Go ahead and join. Also, I'm on Facebook, Grace Essia Nebu. My business page is smilebiz LLC. You can look me up there for my business page. I'm on Instagram at Womanize Academy. Also Miss Grace Enable on Instagram. And you can join my email tribe so you can be up to date on the things that I'm doing. I do have a workshop coming up soon. Join my email tribe at womanarise.co/smilebiz member. Okay, Womanarise.
Hold on, say that again. .co. Mm-hmm.
womanarise.co, slash, like the little slash, slash, smilebiz member, one word, smilebiz member,
Got it.
SMILEBIZ member. And yes, so you can be able to, that's it. So you can be able to join my email tribe so you can be up to date on everything I'm doing. And I appreciate you guys. Thank you for
Good.
having me, Nicole.
You are
Nicole,
so
you always get
welcome.
me stirred up.
And that's a good thing though, because we do that with each other. God knew what he was doing when he put us together. You stir me up and sometimes I mellow you out. It's yin and the yang,
Yeah,
right?
you
We
do
get it
mellow me out
together.
because when it comes to space and walking out purpose, girl, I get stirred up.
Yes.
That is my
And
jam.
I want to thank you again. I know we talked about it on the podcast, but because of our obedience to be at that conference 2 years ago, there have been so many magnificent, glorious things that have happened in my life because of that, because I was on your platform, because, you know, we've been obedient and walking in purpose. And I just want to reiterate that it's not easy. It's not pretty. And sometimes it's not fun. I have been very mad, like mad with a capital T, because of the vision that God has put inside of me.
Oh, Jesus.
Like you want me to do what? Like why? I'm comfortable. Absolutely not. But that disobedience, right, led me to being like, in the hospital. I had several seats for several weeks. And thankfully God did not demote me and use somebody else. But
That's
I'm
right.
grateful to be walking in obedience now. And
That
I
is
want to invite everybody that's listening as well, if this is sticking to you and it's resonating with you, make sure that you also join my Facebook community, the Flow and Flourish community. Make sure that you also join my email list at NicoleRoan.com. And throughout the rest of this month, I am offering discounted balance booster sessions in honor of Women's History Month because I want to help as many women as I can. So take a look there. And then I'm also enrolling and having folks for my 12-week Art of Flow one-on-one coaching program. So if you're looking for additional support, trying to figure out how you can flow and flourish while wearing all these different hats, make sure you come check me out. Make sure you also, again, follow Grace. Let her know how the things that we're talking about are helping you. And again, want to thank you guys for being with us on this Friday night. This is not the last of us that you will see. And hope you have a good weekend.
Bye.
Bye.